Go with me to Genesis chapter 6. Now, at the end of that first session there, I just quickly mentioned, you had these rules being executed now after the fall, and then things go along a little time, and then we get the flood. So Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. Read his favorite chapter in the entire Bible.
Deep discussions.
Deep discussions here that really are meaningless, right? And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, not sons of God, but unto the men, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. In other words, I'm giving you 120 years, and then things are going to get really nasty. Verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, and it repented. That means it saddened the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast. Interesting. And the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Go to chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Verse 6, And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. Verse 11, In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And the selfsame day entered Noah, and Shem, and Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. So 8 souls went in. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in, male and female, all of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Now, this flood situation here, I hate that it is more like story time in the modern world than it is viewed as fact. Especially in the scientific world, and Jonathan, you probably know this better than anybody here, just the scientific world, for whatever reason, just does not want to give any credence whatsoever to a flood, much less this biblical flood. Okay? But this was such a remarkable event in history that had such global impact, to the extent that still today, there is evidence of it all over the earth. In fact, you can go out there in that dirt, right? We're in North Alabama. You can go out there in that dirt and you dig it up, you're going to find seashells. Now, we have not had a hurricane on earth so enormous and so immense that tidal waves have made it all the way to North Alabama. So you tell me, how do those seashells get there?
Indians, bro.
Huh?
Indians, bro.
Indians. There was a lot of Indians, apparently.
Yeah.
I was thinking aliens. I don't know. I do know one plausible answer was a thing called the flood. If you have that kind of faith, you go to these things called the Grand Canyons, and you go, yeah, that didn't happen over millions of years. That happened in maybe a day or two. There are places on this earth still today where waters rush through a place and dig canyons in a matter of minutes. I mean, I've watched before when I was a kid, man, I'd go out every time there was a rainstorm, I'd go in any mud puddle I could find, I'd ride my bike into, and we'd get all kinds of sticks and stuff to dam it up and make a pool, and then we'd break that thing loose and that water go rushing. It's amazing how much dirt suddenly gets dug up and moved just by a little rush of water. Imagine a worldwide flood, especially when those waters originate from the middle of the earth. And some even say from outside the Earth's atmosphere. And so, you know, we have mountains. For what it's worth, we have continents that I think are explained by a worldwide flood. Continents, which, by the way, still move. I think it's kind of interesting, too, when you go back in the book of Genesis and it talks about the land being separated from the waters. It doesn't speak about multiple masses of land. It speaks of them in singular form. Kind of interesting to me, you know? So the flood really can answer a lot of things if you'll have the faith to believe that it was a real event, because in fact I think it was. You know, some even say if you look up there at the moon, you see all those craters on the moon, a result of the flood. You know, that is a certain possibility. There was such an enormous explosion, if you will, and thrusting of material into the atmosphere. Y'all think about when just a single volcano on the surface of the earth erupts, how high it sends stuff into Earth's atmosphere. And you can barely see that thing from outer space. You think it's so massive. Now you imagine the earth cracking open and water. Whoosh. God, you do some plumbing every once in a while. Hydraulic pressure can build up pretty quick, can it? It can blow through piping, it can blow through cast iron, it can blow through PVC like it's nothing. If you get too much pressure built up. You imagine an earth full of water cracking open. You're going to have a little bit of hydraulic pressure. Things are going to fly. I'm certain it did. But it also didn't just change the physical landscape of the earth and change the terms of physical and biological life on earth. It also made changes to policy, to dispensational policy, if you will. If you think about it, especially in terms of God commanding Noah to build the ark, a life raft, if you will, a means of salvation from death. And I mean that physically, but even eternally. What you see is the flood is also a precedent for a plan of salvation. You know, everybody always likes to talk about a plan of salvation. Well, the plan of salvation was, you know, it started with having righteousness and then having faith in God and in what He commanded, then escaping judgment, and then the rewards after. Because you think about once those waters receded and then Noah and his family, you know, began to repopulate the earth, there was incredible blessing for them, including free steaks for a lifetime. That was my bad joke for the day. There was a lot of flesh on the earth, y'all. I mean, things died, including cattle. Karen, she didn't even blink at that. Like, that was a pitiful joke, Greg. Didn't even give any credence whatsoever. And, man, that was funny, Cotton. I talked about dead animals in such a very respectable manner just then. But Rita she didn't like it.
Well, there wasn't that many of them, so it wasn't like he had an unlimited supply.
Now, hey, if Job was before the flood, he had a lot of animals.
There was.
Hey, and it look at this. Hey, you just be quiet and listen and learn, Rita. Let me tell you something. God started with 2 human beings, and before the flood, He created probably millions, maybe even billions of people from 2.
Greg, what you said was when Noah come off of the boat.
Oh, well, yeah. No, but I'm talking about he had plenty of steak, because guess what happened to all those animals that were in existence? They died.
You can't eat rotten meat.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
Oh, Rita.
Greg, I mean,
Rita, you act like you've never picked up a dead possum on the side of the road and made some kind of chili from it or something, you know?
Mess with road
Sheila eats armadillo. All right, so anyway, back to the topic at hand. Rita obviously does not have faith. Okay, that's what we've learned from this whole scenario. What's going to be funny if next week we show up here and we got all kinds of international people in this room, and they've come to see Rita. Rita, I love you, but it's going to be such a disappointment to them people. They're going to come, they're going to expect, Karen, you got to come back. You got to bring donuts next week. We may have an international crowd next week. So anyway, now we get this post-flood dispensation. Things are going to start to change a little bit. So look with me at Genesis chapter 8, verse 20. Genesis chapter 8, beginning verse 20. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Now, Rita,
Right.
wasn't that many animals on the planet.
No,
Now, if he went about burning some of them, guess what's going to happen?
that's a sacrifice to God, though. That's not feeding you badly.
I know, but still, what's going to happen to that species of animal once he sacrifices them?
Well, there was a few extra, I'm sure, by the time.
Well, according to your argument, there wasn't enough. But now you see, I got you.
You said.
I got you.
Mistake.
Shelby's looking at you like,
Needless
I don't know about this woman. Hey, Shelby, this is all an act, okay? I promise you that. We're just really good actors. Now, Rita, there's a simpler answer here. It doesn't say how long after they came off the boat before he builded an altar. I'm going to guess it was long enough for these animals to have some babies. Okay? And so, anyway, it says, Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar, and the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done, while the earth remain, the seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Really interesting stuff here. So there's a couple things that we see right off the bat here. Number one, blood sacrifice is still pleasing God. It's still His requirement. You know, Hebrews chapter 6, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission. Don't go back to that.
Sorry. I can't believe you didn't mention that of every clean beast, he took by sevens.
Back before that. Yeah, that's right. Still not enough animals if you really think about it. Man.
One for steak.
All right, so, yeah, I mean, hey, and I will say this. One cow can feed a family for a year. I mean, there's a lot of meat, unless you eat just too much. Unless you, well, yeah, your family. There's only 8 of them folks, you know. So, all right. So, blood sacrifice still pleasing to God. Number 2, this is interesting. If you read there in verse 22, there is a promise that 4 seasons will exist.
There goes global warming.
I knew you would go there. I actually thought Jonathan would go there before you did, Rita. But you're right. 4 seasons will exist. Day and night will exist. And no more annihilation of Earth's population. Look at chapter 9, verse 11. And God says, And I will establish my covenant with you, neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. So, certainly won't be a worldwide flood to kill all humanity, but there's even the promise that He's not going to kill all, like wipe it out again like that. Now, tribulation is going to get real close, but it's not going to do everybody, okay? And so, anyway, those are incredible promises, but really unique. 4 seasons. Okay? Now, we don't always experience 4 distinct seasons. I'll be honest with you, it's been gorgeously. We haven't really had summer yet. We may skip it. Y'all want to skip summer this year in Alabama? No, not going to happen. It's just going to hit us late, isn't it? But 4 seasons, they're going to exist. Chapter 9, verse 1, look at this. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. Guess what? We still have the same rule in place from back there before the fall. Have babies. Now, y'all think these thoughts. There are 8 family members, like, you know, that's all that came off that boat. I mean, There's some weird thoughts there. That's after the flood. After the fall. There's a conscience there. But there's not yet the conscience of familial relationships. So that's odd to us, but certainly God permitted that at that point for the sake of replenishing the earth. I think he probably had command of the human genome as well, and so he was very well aware that if there's some, getting together between those people, that things were going to be hunky-dory, okay? Figured it out from there. And so, nonetheless, still in place. Look at verse 2, and chapter 9, verse 2. "And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require. And at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. And you, be ye fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein." So there's some continuation here, but then there's some new stuff here. One of the continuation things is continue to enjoy the animal kingdom. Now, here's sort of the new side of that, though. The new side of enjoying the animal kingdom isn't just about having pets or raising livestock. Now it's for food. So for the first time in human history, we're permitted to eat meat. That is a policy change. Okay? And there's no limitation on that except you can't eat it alive. Like no cannibalism or none of that kind of stuff. And so enjoy the animal kingdom. So now meat is permitted. And then number 4, one of the things we see, and this is now a new sort of scenario, is this idea of eye for eye and tooth for tooth. Bloodshed for bloodshed. This is the idea of capital punishment. If you kill somebody or something, the same will be required in return. Okay? This is justice at its purest, most simple form. And to be honest with you, we should be very grateful today that it's not quite that strict. Right? Because ultimately we'd all be dead at this point. Because I'm certain when I drive down the highway at night, I kill at least 10,000 bugs in the summertime. There's a lot of death that happens in my car. Hitting mosquitoes and birds and whatever else.
But they don't have the guts to do it again.
Look at Rita trying to be funny. I at least gave you the benefit, the joy of laughing and catching your joke. You're mean to me, Rita. All right. But here's what we have going on here. We've got human government beginning. Because notice there, it says, verse 6, "Whosoever sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed." By man shall his blood be shed. So men now are permitted to have the authority to enact justice. Okay? So you have human government now beginning to develop. Look at verse 8. "And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you." What you see here is God speaking directly to humanity. He's speaking to Noah and his sons right there. So that's still a carryover. In essence, you really haven't had this significant change in dispensation. You've just had some adaptations of it. You've had some additions to the general rules here. Look at verse 20, chapter 9, verse 20. "And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So what you see here starting, now this is pretty interesting, and this is by God's design, or his, this is by his dictates, is you begin to see classes of society begin. You have a servant class and you have a ruling class. It's a pretty interesting sociological study there, case study. But you see there's some being subordinate to others. This is not a justification for slavery. I just want to make that clear. And I do not condone that. Okay? But you do have here precedent for the idea of, to use the word, stratification of society. You've got layers, if you will. That certainly will play into the whole scheme as we move forward and we get to Abraham, who then has a promised seed, Isaac, whose son then becomes Jacob, whose name is changed to Israel, a people that are going to be created into a nation above all peoples of the earth. Okay? And so you get this dividing, if you will, of society. Chapter 10, look with me at verse 31. These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, and their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations and their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Now, I don't even remember how long ago it's been, but we've done a study here before. You have to go back on YouTube and try to dig it up somewhere. But this is an indication that what God desires on the earth are distinct nations. Okay, this isn't the only proof, if you will, of that. Certainly the establishment of the nation Israel as a distinct and separate nation from the other nations or the Gentiles of the world, same word there. But there is within God a desire for separations and distinctions, nations. Okay? That's a big deal in a world today that wants to get rid of all borders and all distinctions and all uniqueness and make us one huge happy family singing Kumbaya. That ain't going to happen. Okay? It's not even going to happen, by the way, when Jesus returns at the second advent and sets up the kingdom of God on earth. Because even then you're going to have a separation between the Messiah, his priest, and then everybody else. Okay? There still will be hierarchy. There will be within the heavenly realm, body of Christ, there will be within the heavenly realm hierarchy. Not everybody will have the same position, have the same level of authority, if you will. So there will even be distinction there. So it's obvious this is something that is on the heart of God. Chapter 11, verse 5. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So one of the things you see going on here is at that point now, we've got multiple languages on the earth. This isn't necessarily a policy change, it's just a change. Okay? So it's not necessarily that a new dispensation begins, because it's not like God is dictating some new rule. He's just making it so. So now you've got different languages on the earth. And then you have God, even forcing, if you will, human settlement on the globe, across the globe. And so how that happened, what were the specific means or methods that God used? Because what's interesting when you do the word study there, where it says He confounded their languages and he scattered them abroad. Those words in the Hebrew language are what we call causative verbs. In other words, it's something or someone causing something to happen. So God caused them to be scattered. God caused their languages to be confounded. Did he use the animals to drive them out of the city? Was there an infestation of termites that chewed up the walls of the buildings? I don't know. God has command of it all. So who knows? But nonetheless, that's what happened. And this is where it gets interesting, as if it's not already interesting. But this is the world now into which Abraham enters the narrative. We are still pre-Old Testament. We're still within that 2,500 years. The law of Moses still does not exist. Okay? The rules are still relatively simple. But this is the world. And so for the most part, from a policy or from a dispensational perspective, get ready for this, nothing really changes from Abraham to Moses. It's funny because our minds, when we hear the name Abraham, we automatically switch over into Old Testament mode. We think Old Testament law. We think about Israel and all these things. But the reality is, Abraham's a Gentile. He's just a dude among all the dudes of the world. Okay? In fact, if you really want to be specific about it, he was a Babylonian. He was from Ur, which is the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. That's where his family was hailed from. So, pretty interesting thought that eventually those are the people that would hold the Jews captive. Isn't that an interesting twist in the story, right? But it's this real simple world that Abraham now enters into the narrative. And so all the same characteristics kind of remain there. God speaking directly. There's the animal sacrifices. There's the idea of nations. There's the idea of the languages, classes of people, eating plants, eating meat, human government, having babies, all of that. That's the dispensation. Pre-law, okay? And so, of substance, the only real significant change that you really start to see is the establishment of Israel specifically. And it's really not even that it's the establishment of Israel. It's just that the Bible takes the spotlight and puts it on Abraham's family and his children after him. That's what happened. From a dispensation, a policy system perspective, it's still the same. This group of people over here are operating under the same policies as all these over here. But what God has elected to do, to use a biblical word here, what he is electing to do is choose this guy through which he's going to develop a group of people and bring them to the place where they are a covenant people and a nation. Okay, and that's really, that's the substantive change there. Now, it's not really until you get to Exodus chapter 12. Okay, Exodus chapter 12. Because from this point in Genesis 4, you get the story of Abraham and then his descendants and getting off into Egypt and all this kind of stuff, right? And then you come to the book of Exodus, Moses is born, and then here we go, right? But it's not until you get to Exodus 12 that anything new is really added, if you will, to the dispensational system. But at this point, it is all specifically about this one nation of people in the biblical narrative. Okay? Because what God is about to do is change the dispensation. We're still under the same policy system. God's going to add a couple things for the sake of this one family, this one group of people. But it's in preparation. It's really sort of a precursor, if you will, leading up to the wholesale change in dispensation, moving into the dispensation of law. Okay? Hope that made sense. So, some of the changes that were made, or the additions that were made in the dispensation at this point, God told Abraham, hey, listen, I want you to consecrate firstborn males. This was specifically so after the Exodus. Okay? After the Exodus, remember, after the Passover, God said, hey, from this point forward, every firstborn male in your family as well as in your animals, they are to be consecrated, set aside for me, for my glory. Okay? So that was a change. You have the change or the addition of the Passover for this family as just a memorial of where God has taken them. We're still not in the law yet. That's just a tradition that God established with that family. You get the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which ties back to the Exodus. Okay? And then you get God promises protection to this family as they enter into this land that He has promised them. That's really it. Now, salvation at this point in time. Okay, salvation at this point in time was simply about faith in God. That's really what it came down to. Abraham had faith in God. This is all before circumcision or before any of these other rituals that God wanted his family to do. But salvation was take God at His word. And in fact, isn't that what the book of Hebrews tells us about Abraham? Isn't that in fact what James tells us about Abraham? Isn't that in fact what Paul tells us in the book of Romans about Abraham? Okay? He had faith in God and what His word is. Today, it's still the same. The only difference is the word that God tells us to obey is somewhat different than what He told Abraham to obey. Today, He tells us, trust in the death, burial, and resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. We have to have enough faith to say, yeah, Jesus was a real dude. He really did die on the cross. He really did, go to the grave, and He really did raise from the dead 3 days later. I have to trust that that's real. And then I have to accept and trust that that's good enough to cover my sin so that I can go to heaven. They have to take God at His word. It's the same day as it was back then. For Abraham, God said, listen, trust me. I'm going to make a great nation of you. Have a baby with your aged wife. Okay? Take that one and only son of yours and go kill him. You have to take God at His word in every move. And so that's what salvation is. And so that's it. We covered 2,500 years of history in 2 weeks. Really in 4 hours if you think about it. Actually less than that if you really want to be as OCD as Rita about the minutes. Okay? Rita, it's so fun to give you a hard time.
25 minutes.
Now, let me wrap all of this up and way back up to the 30,000 view where we started last week. Last week I started by saying there is no greater argument for the necessity to rightly divide the word of truth than this study right here. Because it is absolutely clear, it is painfully obvious that the rules and the system back then and in those portions of the Bible are different than, let's say, the Gospels or from Paul's writings. They don't marry up. The only way they make sense is if you keep them separated. And therefore, that is the necessity to rightly divide the word of truth. This perfectly illustrates it. You have to, or else you're going to go out there eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and you're going to end up in prison. You're going to be the one dead. Okay? And so this requires the Bible student to pay attention to the changes in rightly divide the word of truth, as Paul says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. All right. That's all I got. I'm all out, Rita.
You want me to freshen you up on something?
Please do.
Get you going?
Come on. Stir up something. What time is it? Never mind. We only got 2 minutes. You ain't got enough time. You ain't got enough time to make sense of it. All right. Evie, you want to spin the wheel? No? Okay, still not there. I know Sambo does. Sire, you spun the wheel? You spun the wheel.